Thank you very much for coming, taking time out of your busy day. I'd like to call to order the Planning and Heritage Committee meeting for the date of June the 15th. First of all, I'd like to, is there any conflict of interest? Anyone have a conflict of interest? Okay. Councilor Yankoff, you're okay? We move on to approval of the agenda. We have agenda for today's meeting do I have a mover? Moved by Mayor Brown, second by Councilor Yankoff, that the agenda for today's meeting be approved. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried. Adoption of minutes of Planning and Heritage Committee meeting on Monday, March the 16th, 2021. A chance to review those, I assume.
Yes, sir.
Any issues or whatever? Do I have a mover? Moved by Mayor Brown, second by Councilor Yankoff, that the minutes of the meeting of March 16th be adopted. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried 2-0. Business arising from those minutes.
Mr. Chair,
any business? Yes.
Yes. Page 2, actually page 1 and 3, number 5, business arising from the minutes on the STRs.
Yes.
I know I brought this up, Alex. At our last meeting, I think it was a planning board meeting. The resolution that was passed last year on scenario 3. Did you get any information from legal counsel? Do we have to rescind that motion?
Mr. Chair, I'm pretty confident there was no resolution of council. So council may have generally gave some direction, but there was no specific resolution.
No, there were 2 votes. There were 2 votes at a regular monthly meeting last March. And the 2 votes...
Of planning board or council?
Council.
Okay, no, it didn't get to council, did it, Rob?
So, March 13th, we came forward with a set of regulations, like proposed regulations of what it could be. So we chose the scenario 4 option just to present to the public consultation.
Correct.
To receive feedback. It wasn't a formal recommendation from staff. At that time, it was planning board decided to proceed to public consultation, but then of course COVID hit, and then we weren't even able to hold or host the public meeting after that.
But the public consultation was to be on scenario 4.
That was correct, correct, Your Worship. It was an option to present to the public as a potential option.
Yeah. And we voted on that. Council voted on that. We had 2 votes. You go to the minutes. We had 2 votes.
This is a year ago in March?
Yes.
A year ago in March?
Yes.
Well, I think what Robert's saying, Your Worship, is that material last March didn't make it to the council floor.
No, it did make it to council.
No.
No, we voted on it.
Well,
voted
on it.
where's the resolution?
It made it out of here, it made it out of the board, but not into council. That's what I'm led to
Well,
believe.
yeah, and maybe to simplify, Mr. Chair, that was my understanding as well, but we'll do some more research on it. The mayor could be correct, but there's my understanding that we had left planning committee heading to council, and that's when it cut off.
The curtain came down.
Right, exactly. So council didn't make a resolution on it, but we will check that.
Well, that's the resolution I referred to when the petitioners come in with their 900 names petition that referred to the resolution. I thought we would have picked that up and looked at it before today's meeting, because I brought it up at our last meeting.
Right, but
What date of the council meeting do you think it was?
Oh, it was our regular monthly meeting,
So can we not just get them from Tracy?
March 9th. Yeah, it was under a planning board meeting, planning board, and at that time, the chair was
Councilor Rivera.
Councilor Rivera.
right, but there's a difference if it's coming out of planning board or if the directive came from council, right? So we'll clarify that and get right back to you.
It could have gone to council to proceed to public consultation, but I just want to make it very
That's
clear that public consultation was never had.
No, Robert, that's my point. That's the point I
okay.
made when the petitioners came to City Hall several Fridays ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point I made. My ask is legally, legislatively, do we have to rescind that resolution that was passed to go forward? Because there is a legal process or a legislative process we have to follow.
Okay, yes, yeah.
And the reason I'm saying this,
Right, yeah.
Mr. Chair, my reason for requesting this correct in this legislative process is that, let's say if this gets appeal, our decision,
Yes.
and it goes to Ireland, and they say, wait now, you missed a step here.
Yeah.
So go back to council and do it all over again.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to,
Well, it makes sense in March. On March the 13th, 13th was a Friday, and that's when the curtain came down on the
Correct.
world, Canada especially.
Correct.
4 days earlier to that would be March 9th,
our
correct?
regular monthly meeting.
And we meet on the second Monday of the month, and
Right.
the 9th would have been the second Monday, so it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But I was led to believe that we didn't get to the public meeting
No.
aspect of life.
No, we didn't, because our resolution that was passed Monday, March 9th, was going to our meeting on Friday the 13th to set out the advertisement, to put everything out there,
Okay.
to advertise it.
Okay, that would make perfect
Yeah,
mathematical.
that's what I'm
Yes,
saying.
absolutely, yeah.
And that's,
Yes.
Robert, again, it's just, I want to check off this box. If we have to rescind that resolution from
Okay.
last year, let's do it for legal and legislative reasons, not just, it's something we have to check off. We have to make sure that we follow a process. And Mr. Chair, again, you were not the chair.
No.
It was Councillor Gregory
Yes.
Byrd. I know there were 2 votes because I read off the minutes when the petitioners come up here.
So where are the minutes now? Why don't we just get them and sort this out now?
Well, it has to go back. I want Alec to
Yeah,
look through his
I'll
lenses.
confirm it with Mr.
Yeah.
O'Malley, just get a really definitive answer
Yeah.
on it, and then I'll just email you folks in regard to what the.
That's all I want.
Right.
Okay,
So we
that's
can't really
great.
do anything with that item today then?
No, this is just a part.
This is just part of the adoption of the minutes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Just going forward, how do we restart the process, is
Yeah.
really what the mayor is referring to.
Thank you.
Okay. Everybody's okay?
Yes.
All right, okay. Do I have a where did we get off the track?
Business arise.
Oh, yeah, all right, we're okay. All right. So, that's that for that. So we can move on to discussion updates. The first one being the short-term rentals. Alex, are you carrying the ball on that?
Yeah, so I'll open it up. So again, I think most people are aware, we had our public meeting at the Confederation Center. We had a fairly strong turnout. We did get a considerable amount of written responses that were very comprehensive and detailed. So Robert's, I don't know whether Robert's got a number, but so we feel that we have some really good supporting evidence in regard to where the community is on this issue to bring forward to restart the process. That what we'll do is we'll just bring it back through planning board. If we need to rescind that, we will do that. But we will indicate what we heard at the public meeting and all the subsequent information that has come in. Based upon it, we will give you folks a recommendation that what we heard from the community was this, and we will proceed from there. There is a desire to get back out and finalize the process. The reason I brought Robert here is that that's one part of it, but then there's more regulations that have to come into play. And if we're going to go back out to the public, those that, if we're going to bring in a bylaw, they're going to clearly want to know all of the parts of the bylaw, not only which option we're going to pick, but how are we going to regulate the process. And Robert is trying to finish that off, because if you're on the other side of the argument, they're going to say, we don't care which option you're going to do, but how are you going to regulate it? And that information needs to be provided. So again, it's no secret that we've been busy, but I'll let Robert speak to it. Again, we would just prefer to bring this to a logical conclusion. We have some momentum here now, but again, we need to get this additional work done. And then as soon as that's done, we will work with you folks to go back, run it through the process, restart the process, indicate what we heard, but we need to lay out all of the supporting regulations that need to be put into place to bring it into force and effect. But maybe Robert could allude to the outstanding piece, and maybe in his anticipation, like a timeline, when we can get that done.
Okay, before we go to Robert, can I just ask a simple, well, maybe not a simple question. When we go back, now that we've had that meeting on May the 17th, okay, that was a kind of a community meeting. It wasn't an official meeting of Charlottetown City Council. That was not an official meeting. That was kind of a welcome back. Let's put the wheels back on it. Let's move on forward. There's some fresh, updated data,
Right.
or updated data, right? Now, that is behind us. Now, when Robert was speaking, is now our first, after Robert finishes his work, we'll be going to the official public meeting, as we always do when it's referred there by council, right?
So you'll restart the process, and then
Yeah.
you'll have to bring in the amendments to the zoning bylaw.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to adopt new regulatory
Yes.
provisions to bring it into force and effect.
Right.
The registration bylaw, things like that. And they'll have to all be done at the same time.
Okay.
So it's not only one bylaw that you're dealing. Anytime you change a bylaw, you have to go back to the public.
Yeah, and change the other.
Right,
Yeah.
so, you know, the public meeting that we had at the Confederation Center was, again, just to gauge, we knew it was a large issue. We didn't know if there was a significant change from when we were to the public last. It was a good opportunity to hear from people,
Yeah.
and they did provide us in my mind, some really,
Yeah.
a clear direction where they are, but it's ultimately.
It was just a community meeting, though.
Right.
It was not an official city council
But it's much
meeting.
better to start the process with some preliminary input.
Yeah, that's right.
And then when we go back out to the public, if we get into, people start to discuss as we're trying to amend the bylaw, you know, all of these various options, you do have the supporting background information
Yes.
flowing from the first meeting that the majority of people thought this is how they would like to see it proceed. So it helps council to focus the discussion as you head out to the public.
Good, thank you very much. Councilor Yankoff.
Sure, just small clarification for me too as well. Thank you, Chair. At the meeting on May 17th, the information that was collected from that will be part of what Robert puts together
Correct. Yep.
to come back for a staff recommendation, will it not?
Yeah, absolutely. yeah.
So it was a purposeful meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oh,
More
definitely,
data.
yeah.
It's just that the meeting was not starting to amend the bylaw.
Okay.
It was to engage the public in regard to,
Sure.
we rarely go out on a bylaw change that you know you can fill the Confederation Center. So the fact is you're trying to narrow the discussion so that when you go out the second time, instead of being all over the 5 options, you've kind of put the radar onto
Yeah.
at least 1 or 2, try to narrow the discussion down. That was the purpose of that meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was to restart the engines.
Right, exactly.
And
Robert,
I
I'm
would-
sorry.
I would most definitely say, like, again, we would call that meeting public consultation,
Yeah.
right? Because it's such a divisive issue, it's an important issue, so that was really us doing public consultation.
Yeah.
We wanted to inform the community on the data set that we had post and pre-COVID.
Yeah.
We wanted to elicit any feedback, so we wanted to hear people's stories. And we want to see, does the stories match or corroborate with the data? And we find that that's the case.
Okay.
So there is great value in
Yep.
still doing a public consultation, not a legislative requirement,
No.
but there's a value in it for staff, and I think for everyone, for the community and
Sure.
council in general, to get a grip and a hold of this issue and see, okay, well, this is the most recent information we have on this issue, so.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
Okay. The floor is yours, Robert, as usual.
So with that being said, as Alex mentioned, there's actually three large parts to this, and there's a third large part that I won't get into too much detail, but must be figured out and worked out prior to even implementing not just the zoning bylaw changes or the licensing framework or licensing bylaw, and it has to do with enforcement. So there's kind of 3 big issues here. We have zoning and official plan amendments to elicit proposed changes based on the scenario we're going to recommend, based on public input to council. Then we have the licensing bylaw requirement and the registration bylaw requirement that we need STR operators to obtain not only permanent approval, but a license from our office, so that when they go to PI Tourism, they have something to show PI Tourism for them to release their license, right? Their tourist license, okay? So, and there's substantial things that we need to sort out with PI Tourism as well, okay? Because as of this summer, and I've had conversations with Janet Wood on this, we have a situation where PI Tourism is renewing licenses on STR operations that never received any compliance or any permit or any approval through the city. So they're still renewing these non-conforming STR operations. So that's an issue, okay? They told us in an email, all right, that they will hold off on issuing any new licenses to a new property until they receive approval from us, okay? So I just want to put that into context because there's a lot of misinformation out there where people, even operators saying, we have a license to operate, right, through TELA, through tourism PEI. But if you look at the TELA application, it says very clearly in red at the top of the application that you still need to obtain municipal approval. And then if you don't have it, it revokes this license. Okay, so we're still having situations where PI Tourism is renewing all their past licenses without any sort of compliance check with the municipality. So that's a big issue right there, which leads me into the third and
But
final.
just before you lead into that,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, could I ask? This was discussed last night, about how the provincial legislature is addressing issues that should be dealt municipally.
Yes.
Now, we're trying to address issues that they're responsible for, and they're not doing anything.
Exactly.
So, Rob, I understand the frustration that it's not just this issue, it's the fire station, it's water capacity. A lot of issues where the legislature is just looking at one municipality, where there are 59 municipalities on this province. So it's not just us it's not just the city of Charlottetown that is going forward on some issues.
Yeah.
But we've been talking to the province about this for how long? Let's get on the same, and Mr. Chair, we met with the former Minister of Social Development and Housing to get us on the same page for these,
Same rules.
for the rules regarding STRs. And we thought we had a path forward.
Is that why we got that letter with all the list of the STR operators that all have new licenses for this year and they weren't supposed to get them? Is that why?
So PI Tourism, they have released.
Yeah, because we got a list
Licenses.
yesterday in an email of
Yeah.
all the new STR that got new licenses.
But
and they
how-
weren't supposed to get. new
How many were approved by the city to allow that list to go forward?
Well, Robert says none.
We haven't approved any, have we?
No, but they're
So-
all approved by the province. Okay.
And I want to also distinguish between, like, again, when we're talking about short-term rentals in the context of like the province and our approvals, we're not just looking at private residents being STR, we're looking at heritage inns, right? We're looking at cottage development, we're looking, right? So this goes even beyond that as well, right? The problem is that we're getting sidestepped by the province when it comes to personal residence, right? So they're basically issuing a license or renewing a license without getting approval or confirmation of approval, even if it's legal under the zoning to do that. And that's been a huge issue for us, okay? So that leads me into kind of the third and the final big project. And this project is not really planning and building specific. This is a corporate. This is a corporate project. This is creating a summary conviction bylaw. Okay, so not only to enforce STR regulations and licensing requirements, but to enforce any bylaw, whether it be the fire prevention bylaw, whether it be the property standards, the noise bylaw, the building code bylaw, the zoning bylaw.
Yeah.
So right now, our hands are tied when it comes to enforcement, and this is why I want to put this forward to the committee, because it's going to be very, very difficult if we come out with regulations and a licensing requirement that we can't enforce. Because policy, regulation is only as good as it's enforced, right? So that is a whole nother project that like, you know, I believe will need to be prioritized in order to effectively not only implement our bylaws and our licensing requirements, but then to ensure that, yes, there is conformance with these buildings that they're applying for, right? From a building code perspective, right? From a zoning perspective, from a fire prevention law perspective. So this is a multi-layered issue. This requires a variety of not just planning bylaws that have to be passed, but I believe corporate bylaws that have to be passed, right? Because we know, even talking to Todd Sutcliffe, we know that bylaw enforcement, they're hampered when they even get a simple noise complaint.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why, you know, it's a lot more complex. It would be difficult to move forward with regulations and a license requirement when there's no enforcement because, well, you know.
But, Your Worship, or Mr. Chair, you know, we're going to try to get this tidied up as quickly as we can. Again, we're trying not to lose the momentum. The public don't want to be back here in 3 or 4 months. It may be that, and again, defer to our legal, but it's to adopt this option, to bring in the required bylaws, at a later time when we think that we can at least get them implemented, so that at least, the public are able to engage, what are we going to regulate? And then if we need to bring in the other bylaws with a time frame on it to get them done, that may be an option, but it would be nice to do it all at once.
Yeah, sure.
And again, if you're going to get into that discussion with both parties, they need to know what we are regulating and how we're going to regulate it. Because if we're going to get a challenge on it, we're going to be either at IREC or maybe in court. So, but you could also, just to expedite it, say, we know the option we want. We want you to then to bring in the supporting documents. We want them done by this date, and then at least that kind of closes things up. But it's just a matter of whatever time frame that Robert thinks that he can work on. We prefer to bring it all in as at one. But the reality is we don't want to be back in September and it's kind of starting all over, because then people are going to lose their, like they're going to go, well, I thought we had this discussed at our last meeting at the Confederation's.
There's nothing about communication, eh?
Mr. Chair, could I just ask?
Yes, Your Worship?
We do have enforcement, Robert, and that enforcement is that we have to go to the court system through civil court, which takes up too much time, takes up too much expense. And Robert, I've made requests, not to you specifically, but to the department, about summary offense ticketing. I think we've been asking for the last 6-9 months, and it's planted in someone's office. I don't think we're reinventing the wheel here, because Stratford has one. They have a summary offense ticketing system, or
We have one, it's on the agenda here.
Yeah, I know that,
Yeah.
but it's very important that we have it in place, as you said, so that we can start enforcing what we're trying to regulate. I just want to ask, Robert, you get the STR licensing with municipally, tourism, PEI, provincial, summary offense ticketing. What was the first issue that you started off with, or the
Registration bylaw?
Zoning, planning, and-
So it'd be the zoning and official plan amendments, which
Changes.
are basically the regulations and rules.
Those are the 3 steps we have to.
That's correct. And we can proceed forward with the proposed official plan zoning regulations as well as the licensing framework, like the licensing bylaw together. But I just want to make it very clear that the summary conviction bylaw is basically going to be the bylaw where if this is going to work or not.
Right.
Right. And also to bring up the point, Town of Stratford does have a summary conviction bylaw, but I was talking to one of the staff there, and from what I've heard, it's not as efficient as they would like to, because they're having problems with attaching. If the court even upholds their side, they're having issues with tying the fine to something, because the court's not tying the fine to anything. So property assessment taxes are done by the province, and apparently the province is not willing to do that. The only other option, I talked about this with Todd Sutcliffe, is that we attach it to the utility bills, because we technically do have the right to require payments for any utilities and services offered by the municipality. That was my suggestion, but again, even Todd told me that when he had simple noise complaints, like noise violations, into the bylaw, he's brought it to the courts. He might have been successful, but there is no there's no way, he said, where they actually leverage those fines or tie those fines to something. So, you could be found in violation of the noise bylaw, but if there's no penalties, then again, I go back to my original argument. How is it enforceable? How is that going to enforce the rules or make someone compliant with the bylaw?
We need help in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, point well taken.
And,
Okay.
and Todd Sutcliffe has brought this up apparently for the last couple of years. So, I just started wading into this right now.
Yeah.
And just from the information that I got from him, this is something that definitely needs to be sorted, and it's been on the agenda for a bit now. It's been an issue he's brought up.
We'll move it to the top. That'd be Mr. Hooley.
Yes, Mr. Hooley's office doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Karen is.
Karen Campbell. Okay, thank you, Robert. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Robert.
We're running really short of time here. Summary offense ticketing, do you want to give us an overhead or an overview of that?
I think it's the same as, I'm just going to give you the Coles notes on that.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact is if we're going to get challenged on these things, we have to be really careful that if we adopt this thing and it gets struck down the first month, it's not going to be ideal. So we would prefer to, again, have this nicely vetted
Yeah.
and ensure that, because everything that we do flows from the province. If those
Yes.
tools aren't there, then we have a problem.
Yep.
So we just want to make sure that, that again, we don't raise expectations and can't deliver. So we will work to make sure that to Mr. Zilke's point there, that we're bringing it in and that we can effectively do what we're telling the public we're going to do, because if we get a challenge the first month
Yeah.
and then get struck down, well then it takes
Kind
the
of
whole
sours the
momentum
whole
out of the
thing.
whole
Yeah.
process. But again, we don't want this to be delayed. There's so many other planning initiatives that's been
Yeah.
around a long time, so I'd like to bring this one to some closure, but we just need some last minute tidy ups to make sure that those additional documents are done in a way that are robust enough to take us where we want to go.
Could we say the end of June?
Can I just add a point
Sure,
clarification
go
onto
ahead.
the summary proceedings bylaw? An issue too is the legislative structure of the Summary Proceedings Act right now. So if you go to the back of the act, there's usually supposed to be an appendix or a schedule that will define fine amounts, like to the violation. There's nothing like that for the city of Charlottetown. So
Anything for Stratford?
no. In
Oh.
fact, there's only unincorporated areas. For some reason, the province decided to include fine violations, like to define it and then provide a value to that violation for unincorporated areas, but there's nothing in regards to Stratford or Charlottetown. If you look at other Summary Proceedings Act in other provinces, they will clearly define violations and specify which violations according to which bylaw. So it's not just vetting through our bylaw. It's also looking at, well, what's the legal enforcement that's flowing from the province? Like, do they have to make an amendment to the Summary Proceedings Act to include those fines, those violations, and those fine amounts in order for the court to uphold, I guess, if we do win and it factually shows that yes, they're a violation of bylaw, then they can be leveraged this ticket, right, for that amount. But we don't have that right now in the legislation. So that is also something that's making this, the enforcement difficult. So we can come up with a really well-crafted bylaw, but it might require, an amendment to the actual provincial legislation, like the act itself,
Okay.
so.
We'll get clarity from Mr. Hooley
Yeah.
as to whether that needs to be done to bring it
Yeah.
into force and effect.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Mr. Chair, at our next meeting of the Capital Region Mayors,
Yes,
I think we should have chairs of planning and development at that next meeting.
Sure.
Let's look at a regional model. So all three capitals are approaching the province to say, amend the Summary Convictions Act to include summary offense ticketing for the three municipalities. I think that has to be done because we're just an incorporated body, right? We're a creature of provincial legislation.
Yes.
So we need that legislative authority to administer or apply these.
sure, and we all do. We all-
Yeah, the whole region.
And that meeting you're speaking of, do they serve lunch?
They do.
I'll be there.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you. The third one is the water lots.
The water
Water
loss
lot
is, so of course, we went through that in January, February, it was tied into some other amendments. I sent that to the two biggest players, which is the Port and CADC. When they got it, and then we were trying to get a public meeting established. There's been a change in leadership at CADC, and they were asking for more time. So I'm just the middleman, so I went back to the chair and just said, can we delay at their behest? They're also seeking legal opinions. But the point is, they're not resisting it. They just want to make sure that it's the same thing. They, for the most part, I think, are relatively on board. They just want to make sure it's very clear what their authority is, what our authority is, because it's multi-jurisdictional. So
Plus, we have one that carries this summer.
right.
It's not as though it's a panic
Right.
situation.
So I'm meeting with the applicants, and they're, on the one hand, they're not really pushing really hard, but we need to bring this one to closure as well, and then we need to, just set a public hearing. So the last conversation I had, but again, that's up to you folks. You can tell me that we're going to a public hearing, whatever month you so desire, but at least CADC had asked that, why don't we just go through the season, make sure that the regulations that are already applied to that operation are working, and that before we change the bylaw, if they weren't working, it will allow us more opportunity to put more regulations, or, you know, their attitude is, let's watch this first season, and then come in maybe in September. But again, I told them every month they've asked for delay. It's not, I don't get to delay. I've been deferring to the chair.
Yeah.
But we're, you know, and then so the amendments that were also wrapped up with that, we're going to deal with them on next week. There were some other zoning bylaw housekeeping items that were.
And we're going public next week?
It's the same for Frangus Drive. We're dealing with some zoning bylaw amendments that we've been through months ago that were sort of embedded with the waterfront, so we're kind of separating them.
Okay.
So I don't know that we need to make a decision right now, but that's why that it hasn't come back to a public hearing.
Yes.
But again, I take the direction from you folks. If you want me to set a public hearing,
Well, I think we're safe with what we
we're
have in
doing now,
place.
and I think the players involved right now
Yeah.
are working cooperatively with the
Yeah.
owners down there. I think it's
Yeah.
a good situation.
Right.
I think they're gonna be thorough and coordinated, and there's no panic, so if you guys, people are all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm fine, because let's do it right and we're going
Yeah.
ahead.
I would say September's a good month because there's a
Yeah.
couple of months to change the bylaw, so that September, October, then they're
They're ready for next season.
right, exactly, and we're not back to January again. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just like you, Mr. Chair, I'm focused on the short-term rental issue.
Yeah,
Can
Get that
we,
yeah.
moving down.
before we adjourn,
Yes.
are we able to, Chair, when Mr. Forbes gets the information he's going to on this, whether or not we need to rescind number 4, can we issue a press release to the public so that they understand what the next process is, so that everyone is on the same page?
So there are minutes.
Correct.
You just go to the second page.
Oh, yeah.
And I do have another document there, but that was a closed session, so confidential. You can just get that from Tracy. But you can see the 2 resolutions.
Okay, so we'll look into that, and we may come just at a separate meeting just to rescind that one, and then the other one will flow whenever it's ready, but we can deal with that issue.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
for anyone looking for that, all they have to do is go to charlottetown.ca,
Yeah.
go to Mayor and Council, go to council meetings, and look at the package for March 9th, 20.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're okay then,
Yeah,
Alex?
that's fine, yeah.
Are we okay
On
with
all
what we're
3?
doing?
He's going to look at it with our legal counsel and then come back.
In the minute I know, if you need to rescind that, we'll just put that on to the next council meeting,
Yeah.
regardless of where the other one is, just so that we
Just-
don't have to
so we start with Kingston.
do 2 things at once, because if you're doing that at the same night, that's going to confuse me.
So we can rescind and then start fresh.
Start.
Right, exactly, right.
Okay.
If that's what Mr. Hooley, it's just the fact that it was for a public hearing, but at any rate, I'll defer to him.
Yeah, okay.
Just want to play
So-
the rules.
Yeah, that's right. So we have no introduction of new business, we have no new business. Okay, do I have a mover to adjourn? Move to adjourn, thank you very much, thank you folks, thanks.